Welcome back to the Fatheads Eyewear Studio with your two favorite IndyCar influencers. We're here for the 7th episode of Unverified. It's hard to believe we're at episode 7.
It's hard to believe you just called us influencers.
I know.
I believe that we are. I certainly think that our opinions matter, and people watch this show, and even though they may say that they don't, Marcus Armstrong. We'll get to that in a little bit. But, yeah, it's great to be back, and we can officially say it next month, the Indianapolis 500. Welcome to April, a busy month surrounding the Indianapolis 500. We have one IndyCar race in the month of April, correct? Because Barber is technically in May?
Yeah, no, Barber's in May, so one IndyCar race to talk about for the next month and a half, but that's fine. That's fine. It's all good.
It's all a build up to the Indianapolis 500 anyway.
Well,
but hey, great to be here. Kyle's here. Kyle's back from Houston.
Yeah,
I'm back. David Land, Tony Donahue.
We got a stacked show. We got a lot of opinions today.
There's so much.
A lot
to
of
discuss.
opinions.
You're gonna love this show.
We can't be forgetful here because I think you guys already forgot because it's not on our whiteboard. We ended last show on the discussion topic of.
We'll get to it. I didn't do my research on that, so maybe.
Come on.
Yeah.
Man.
I forgot. I'm sorry.
All right, well, Tony sucks.
We'll get the Raul Boesel, Vitor Meira.
Oh my God!
Back and forth.
You're gonna keep them waiting the entire show again. Like,
yep.
Maybe
we'll do a special segment to throw up like Thursday of us.
No, I think we should talk about it.
Okay,
let's just do it. Kyle can. You know what? Kyle can fact check us. Kyle, I want you to pull up the stat book.
Yeah, I'll
just
be like,
fact check us on this.
I'll be like Jamie.
But we'll do it here at the end. So Vitor Meira, Raul Boesel debate. Perfect. At the end.
Cool weekend for us.
Yeah.
Thursday, we went to the IndyCar test at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Got to talk to some drivers. On Sunday, I drug you to the IndyCar Exchange for
kicking and screaming.
Kicking and screaming. Autograph session. Got to talk to some drivers there as well. We're going to discuss that. We also got a behind-the-scenes tour yesterday you and I did at the IMS Museum, which opens to the public coming up on tomorrow. 10:30 is a ribbon cutting. Looks like the rain's going to hold off. It's going to rain in the morning. 10 to 12, there's going to be a window over Terre Haute, and they will get that started. So we are going to discuss all that and more here on Unverified. Again, like and subscribe to this video. I think we are simulcasting on your channel.
We are simulcasting, but the only place you can chat is on the Unverified channel. So if you want to join in the discussion, maybe you want to throw something out there about Raul Boesel and Vitor Meira, Kyle is watching, Kyle is listening, and it's a good way to participate.
All right, so where would you like to begin? We had the test last Thursday on the road course. Talked to several drivers, including Connor Daly, your points leader, and the winner of the first 2 races of the year, Alex Palou. You were put over on the TV side of things, which was interesting. So they had 2 local TVs, and then David had a camera, so he basically led the news on Thursday with the coverage from IMS.
That was insane, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I ended up in the middle, and I'm like...
Let me set the stage real quick.
Yeah.
So what they do for us in media and us influencers is they usually, especially on a colder day like that, they'll take us in one of the Formula One garages, basically, and they'll set up a makeshift bullpen press conference type of area. So that's where we were. We knew what drivers were going to be there, and it's kind of, I think in other sports they call it a scrum, a media scrum.
Yep.
And usually they separate, local TV to their, AP writers and the people that they may have a direct relationship with, Forbes, those type of places. But
Forbes gets its own spot.
Forbes gets his own spot. And then on Thursday, we were in there, and it was basically anybody who wasn't on video was over here in one area. And then you, with your camera, which you can find on your YouTube channel, that coverage, which was awesome on Thursday. And then, the 2 local, I think it was
Fox 59 and Channel 13. So the last 2 broadcast partners of the race.
So they were out there. And you were kind of right in the middle of that. Yes. And you were the one kind of leading those conversations.
Well, that was what was weird about it was I'm sitting there. And, so there's 3 people with tripods. It's me and the 2 local news people. And so... IndyCar, kind of rightly so, said, video people, you do this, and everybody else who's just kind of recording audio or maybe just with a cell phone, you go over here.
Yep.
But then I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I have all these questions about the first 2 races. I don't think local media cares about this, number one. But then Alex Palou's the first person to walk up, and I'm just kind of like going there, like, am I going to? I kind of looked at the local media because I don't want to necessarily step on toes because. I think they tend to, rightly or wrongly, kind of prefer the local, especially Fox 59. I'm like, you're broadcasting the Indy 500 in this market. And I kind of looked at them a little bit and was like, okay, they're not asking a question. I look at Alex Palou and go, all right, I'll lead us off. And I asked a whole bunch of inside baseball questions, and then I kind of I asked 3 or 4 in a row. And I kind of look at the 59 guy, and he asked one question, and then there was no other question. And I'm like, so I kept going with Palou. And Palou walked away, and I kind of looked at the guys and was like, I'm sorry, guys. I mean, if you guys want to ask local flavored questions, go for it. Because I'm going inside baseball, and they're like, oh no, don't worry about it. And I'm sitting there going, well, I guess I'm going to ask all the questions on the local media. Maybe they should pay me or something. But it was weird. It was a weird thing. It's different because usually, like you say, those things work in a different way where everybody they were actually really are pretty. Well run, I think, those bullpens, because everybody kind of has a space. Everybody kind of knows where they're supposed to go, and it seems like most everybody gets all the drivers that they want to get. But obviously at a test, especially a road course test, you're going to get a very small amount of media, which is a good thing for us because we got a lot more time with the drivers, got a lot of access, but certainly a much different way than it usually runs.
And there's so much to debate. Obviously, we talked last week about the thermal race and what was great and what was not great about that. I talked to Alex Palou on Thursday, and I was kind of interested. We had talked about this with the relationship that he has built now with Meyer Shank. Obviously, they have that technical partnership and alliance and how that's helping Alex. It's helping Felix Rosenquist and Marcus Armstrong, who are off to 2 solid starts for that team in the 60 and 66. And then I said, hey, you get to partner with Elio Castroneves and be kind of a quasi teammate with him in the month of May. So I put that on my channel. Talked to Santino Ferrucci a little bit of just, it seems like with Foyt, they're at a point right now, 2 races in, with Santino and David Malukas being there, being teammates for the first time, kind of building that camaraderie. I always like to kind of know what it's like. It's still a team. You still have to have that chemistry. You still have to have that bond, and how long that takes to form. So I know you got to talk to a few other drivers as well, including Connor Daly on Thursday. Other takeaways from last week's road course test?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to gauge what's going on when it's, what was that? It was 7 drivers, I think. So I think there were some lap times reported. I think Dixon was fastest. Dixon also spun out at some point during the test. The main thing that I wanted to know, and I really never got a very good answer from that, was why test at the Indy road course. And actually, I got a comment that I thought was really interesting, which was, it's cheap to test at the Indy road course. And I said, ugh, I guess.
And I asked Alex Palou the same question because I was like, okay, you've won here several times. You've won this race in May the last 2 years, and he's a data guy. So the more data that we have and the more information that we have, especially on maybe what the tires look like, because, it was probably 55 degrees that day, which is more than likely what we're going to see in May. Maybe a little bit cooler than that. We thought we were going to see some rain, which Connor told me. He was like, "I'm ready to go out in the rain because you just never know." And remember, a couple of years ago, was it 20?
That was the first rain race with the aero screen.
Yeah.
And Connor, actually, I had a quote with Connor. Connor was the only driver that would talk to me. All the drivers after that race were all like deer in headlights. And credit to Connor, he was willing to talk. And he was like, we got a problem.
Yeah.
I know that IndyCar's made modifications since then to the aero screen. But I actually can't remember a heavy rain race since the 2022 GP. Has there been one? I don't think there has been.
Yeah, I just can't think of the track. There has been.
Chat, help us out.
Yeah. And then on Sunday, we got to go up to the card exchange, talk to some drivers, and I'm going to open the floor to you. You and Marcus Armstrong, a little fun. There was no ill will behind it, but had a cool little back and forth there about some things. And I think we're going to have either him on this show or we'll have you interview him in May, and you guys can discuss something that you may disagree on.
Yeah, we got into it a little bit. There's no doubt about it. You might, if you watch the Speed Street podcast, he was on there. It was sometime in the off season. I can't remember exactly when. But he went on there and he kind of threw me under the bus about my opinions on street course racing. And look, I told him this at the car exchange. I was like, I don't hate street course racing. He thinks I'm the biggest hater ever. So I think we need to set him straight. Maybe he can set me straight a little bit about it. Marcus kind of said, we should do it on video. And I said, as an entertainer, I said, absolutely, we're going to do it on video. So we're going to talk to the Shank PR and get that set up, and it should be a good debate. But Marcus, I really appreciate him. Yeah. I think he's I've said it a few times. I think he's a thinker. He's very similar to Scott Dixon. I imagine him is what it was like to cover Scott Dixon in like 2001. I kind of get those vibes from him. I think that's part of why he's still kind of in that Ganassi circle, although he's not in a Ganassi car technically right now. I think, you mentioned the Shank team. I kind of think of them in some ways. Do you remember the G2 team with Graham Rahal and Charlie Kimball? That's kind of what Shank. That's kind of what Shank feels like right now, in my opinion. Because you look at it's Felix Rosenquist and Marcus Armstrong, two drivers that within the last 4 years have driven for Chip Ganassi Racing. So it makes a lot of sense.
Which I think just helps, and I think Chip and the entire team would tell you that you have two drivers at Meira Shank that know how to set up a Ganassi car, been inside of a Ganassi car. They've obviously looked at plenty of data between Scott Dixon, Alex Palou, and even Kevin Simpson, and I think that's going to help. We've already obviously seen it in the first two races with Palou winning those, but I think it's elevated Meira Shank as well, and also with Chip Ganassi. Talked to Marcus Ericsson. We have some fun things coming up in the next couple of weeks with him. Got some cool Parkside cards while we were up there.
Got a sneak peek of the new Parkside cards.
Got a sneak peek of the first editions. Jack Harvey was there, and Connor Daly was there as well. Always fun to catch up with Connor. We talked to him last Thursday at the test, and then again on Sunday at the card exchange.
Yeah, no, Connor's always good. Connor likes the show. See, this is I think all of us we're going to talk about media and media relations. Kumbaya, baby. He has a show. We have a show. We all watch each other's shows. It's all good. Well, it's all good. Kumbaya, brother.
We're all, I don't know if we're all small fish in a big pond or big fish in a small pond, but no, we like Connor. I've been friends with Connor for over a decade. Appreciate what they do at Speed Street. I love listening to Hinch and Rossi's podcast as well. We're going to get into this. It's supposed to be all about positivity and moving the sport forward and having, like you said, kumbaya, but certainly,
Graham wants it to be kumbaya.
Yeah, we like Chase. We like everybody. There's a lot of good podcasts out there and a lot of good webcasts as well. And I think we're gelling nicely in that realm and that space, so to speak.
I've got a new brush source for you.
Oh boy,
I think we should kind of launch into this. So, Pato Award made some interesting comments at the end of Thermal, specifically kind of throwing Chevy under the bus, and specifically that Chevy drivers tend to not get out of the way when they're laps down. I think we saw that at St. Pete. We saw it at Thermal. I have it on very, very good authority.
You do.
That Honda is very organized at pulling drivers out of the way.
As they should be.
Chevy's not. Pato expressing that is legit. He's not just being mad about that. That's a real thing. That's a real difference between perhaps the manufacturer philosophies. Because I know one of the things that I know about Chevy and how they operate is that they're very competitive. And I think maybe they have a different philosophy, which is it's every man for himself, or at least the teams get to decide, who they support and who they don't. And at Honda, if you're racing with an H on your car, you are racing with all of the H's out there. Yep. And I think maybe Chevy, it seems like the bow ties are a little bit less organized. I don't know if that's good or bad, and I'm not suggesting necessarily we end up in a position like NASCAR is, particularly on the plate tracks where it's the manufacturers are just all constantly working together and it ruins the show. But I think that's something to look out for as we get to Long Beach, especially if it goes green with 27 cars out there. Traffic's going to be an issue.
Is there a little bit more smoke or fire with what Pato had to say of what could we see maybe in 2026? Because as we know, the rumor has been Andretti and Chevy more than likely going to be partners next year. Kind of got to even some things out.
There would have to be a team that would move.
There would have to be a team that would have to move.
Could it be that team? I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out.
Very possibly could be.
I think it. So here's.
We shall see.
You have to get over a hill. You have to get over a hill there. If that's, and listen, we are way out in the weeds right now.
Yeah.
if that were the case, you would have to kind of get over the whole Fernando Alonso slagging Honda off for years and years and years, and the Formula One controversy between those two organizations. But stranger things have happened. I mean, here's the thing too.
Kumbaya, right? Is that we're all supposed to be doing?
Think about Bobby Rahal and Honda. They had a pretty ugly parting of ways around 1994 when he missed didn't miss the show, but had to kick the Honda out for an Ilmor engine. They left Honda for years. They were a Mercedes team, I think, then a Ford team. But years passed. They came back together when they came into the IRL, and you'll never guess which team won Honda's first Indy 500. It was Rahal. So stranger things have happened. We'll see. I think it's early days to be talking about that at the moment.
Speaking of Bobby Rahal, it was announced earlier today that Jay Fry will be team president at RLL, Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. When that news came out this afternoon, I don't think anybody in this room was completely shocked by it. Graham 110% went to bat for Jay Fry on Media Day back in January, discussing how great of a job that he's been doing, and he doesn't get the credit for that. So Graham Rahal obviously has been one of Jay Fry's biggest supporter.
He might be the only driver that really publicly has supported Jay. I'm trying to think. Maybe Tony Kanaan has said a few things that are positive, but obviously he's not an active driver. I think this is totally a Graham Rahal move, and you know, Graham. This is going to be a Graham Rahal heavy
Rahal show, baby.
Bang!
Kyle's excited.
Kyle's favorite driver.
Listen, Graham has kind of made no bones about it. He's going to be a car owner whether he likes it or not, right? And this almost feels like this is kind of a Graham Rahal decision, and maybe we'll get into the weeds on that. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if Graham may ultimately made the call on this, or at least made the suggestion.
What does this mean for Rahal? How does somebody like Jay Fry move that team forward? That it's been obvious the struggles that they have had at the Indianapolis 500, especially qualifying weekend. We've heard Graham say multiple times that, we've got things figured out. Things are going to be better, and then they're back on the back row last year. So is Jay Fry somebody that maybe can help them elevate their game, especially in the month of May?
Well, in some ways, it's like hiring Roger Goodell to coach your NFL team, right? You're going to have someone with intimate knowledge of the current rule book, why, hows, and, by the way, loopholes. That's a big factor. And you look at McLaren, who'd they go hire? Brian Barnhart, who had been in that position before. I don't think we've seen someone this fresh out of that position immediately join a team. I can't remember the last time something like this happened. I think this is a way bigger story than maybe folks are realizing. Jay also, I think this is another thing a lot of people don't realize about Jay Fry. His background is team management. He was the brains behind MB2 Motorsports, which was the Johnny Benson Valvoline car and the 36 Skittles car in NASCAR, and then moved on to Red Bull and was kind of the mastermind behind the Red Bull NASCAR program for many years. So Jay he's in a position that he hasn't been in a while, but a position that he has built very successful race-winning teams before. And this could certainly be a cultural change for Rahal in the positive direction.
Again, not surprised by this. Media Day has mentioned Graham Rahal. I wouldn't say went out of his way, but I would certainly say that he made sure everybody in that room and everybody listening knew exactly how he felt about Jay Fry, and probably had heard some of the rumblings that we had been hearing for a few months prior to that Media Day. So,
contrary to what they say, everybody knew that was a possibility.
So Graham Rahal and probably MP are the two people that are the most happy that Jay Fry is employed by Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing.
No, so here's the thing. And so people are, I just tweeted this about maybe an hour ago, and some people are actually replying. 100 Days to Indy is actually still happening, by the way. It's now a Fox Nation exclusive show. So Drive to Survive would not hesitate to do a Jay Fry episode. This is the biggest. Like, you think about this. Again, I need to point out how unprecedented this is, that the commissioner of a sporting league is running one of the teams a month after he was fired from the sporting organization that he is now competing in.
Must have been a 30-day non-compete.
Well, I didn't even think about that.
Could have been. I don't know that, but we got to look at the dates. I didn't even think about that. Does it line up? Because it was the end of February. Remember, it was the very end of February. So
you're right. So there you go. But I mean, you want to talk about drama? You want to talk about getting people talking? The fact that more people aren't talking about this as like if this was Formula One, this would just be the biggest story. NASCAR. Imagine if Steve Phelps left NASCAR tomorrow and started running 2311.
Yep.
Like, that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Well, we don't the problem is we don't talk about team presidents or team principals in the same regard that F1 does, and maybe that's something we need to work on.
Yeah. No, 100%. Well, we're not even talking about who we replaced, are we?
No,
Not at all.
not really.
I bet if you did a police lineup right now, you wouldn't know who the previous president of Rahal was.
Maybe just from passing and seeing him with an RLL shirt on, but not off the top of my brain.
That's right. You don't even know the name.
Yeah, I mean, I do, but what is it? Go ahead.
I don't know the name.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I saw it. But so anyway,
So we don't do a good. So here's the thing: if you and I don't know that information,
yeah.
and probably we're just not doing a good job.
Well,
But I feel like as a sport, to Kyle's point, this is an element that's so very important, and it's one we almost never talk about.
has 100 Days to Indy been filming? I don't remember recall seeing anybody in.
If you see someone with an orange vest, they're filming 100 Days to Indy.
I don't know if I saw any orange vests, but that's okay. Look forward to that. That's cool. I think I liked that series, and I don't want to get too far in the woods in it. I think, after the Indianapolis 500 is also like when a lot of drama starts happening as far as rumor mill type stuff, contracts. Obviously, we'll get to June 1st, and we'll see we should know where Will Power's heading, or at least have some rumblings of that.
It's okay. You have Unverified for that.
Yeah. So I had breaking news here.
Oh,
Sorry.
my God.
I don't mean to go Adam Schefter on you.
No,
here.
go Adam Schefter. Hit us with it.
So AJ Foyt Racing and Catherine Legg will be the 35th entry in the Indianapolis 500 with Chevy backing.
What? Wait a second. Really?
So we're gonna have two cars battling for final.
Oh my God. Well, okay, so
April Fools. I was gonna. All right, so hold on, and I look. Trust me, I hate to be that guy.
Set me up.
I know. I don't like to be that
set
guy.
me
Who,
up.
we used to call it a darn Schefter because Adam Schefter would there was one that was called the darn Schefter to get you. So I don't want to be that guy, but I knew we'd get a reaction out of you that we
I
needed to see.
believe that hook, line, and sinker because I'm like, oh, Penske did it. Penske's
exactly what I said. So I said to Kyle, I said, I'm thinking about, I'll razz David up a little bit and do an April Fool's joke about 34 cars going to be in the entry list that comes out, and that the 34th car will get to race, but they will not be awarded prize money, but they will be awarded points.
I was like,
and
no way he buys that.
Yeah,
like,
and
no
Kyle
way.
was like, you should do it with Catherine. And I said, well, maybe Foyt, because then he's going to go exactly where you went, where your brain went.
Well, because you said
of IMS, Roger Penske got it done. So April Fools, we're trying to have some fun.
Here's how you got me. I'll tell you exactly how you got me. Because I probably wouldn't have believed that.
Well, you know me well enough that I can keep a pretty straight face, and sometimes you don't know when I'm serious or not.
We knew
serious.
what we were doing.
Right before we went on the air, I always yell at Tony about his phone. I'm like, don't freaking bring your phone. And he's like, I got to bring my phone because there might be breaking news during the show. And I was like, okay, Tony, whatever. And then he pulls the damn phone out after we're kind of doing the news segment, and he goes, Catherine Legg, third AJ Foyt entry. I'm like, and then the first question through my head was, where did Chevy get an extra engine? And then my next thing was like, oh, it's a Penske thing.
Yeah. Which is I told Kyle exactly where that was
going. You guys saw live what my
go.
brain process does when I see breaking news.
What's funny is Tony and I completely predicted your brain process.
Yeah.
We were like, you know what he's going to say.
Half the crap that comes out of my mouth off the record you give that reaction to. So
that's true.
I see that reaction 1,000 times. Kyle, before we get into some other things, what's popping in the chat while we let David kind of catch his breath over there?
We had some fun discussion on Steak and Shake once Graham Rahal got brought up. That Steak and Shake is, in fact, still around.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, I went to a concert at Gamebridge Fieldhouse on Friday, and the Steak and Shake headquarters is right there. And their national headquarters is right next to Gamebridge Fieldhouse. And I took a friend of mine's son to the concert, and he's like, "There's a Steak and Shake right there." I was like, "No, that's their corporate office." And he's like, "There's a corporate office?" And I was like, and we're gonna talk about Graham and I's relationship, but it kind of started because we used to not like each other, and I ripped him a few times back in probably 2014, 2015. And then one night on Sunday night after the 500, after the after party, him and I ended up having a couple milkshakes together at about 2 a.m. at the Steak and Shake downtown, and we've been all good since. All right, what else we got popping in the chat, Kyle? Again, you can send your comments here on the Unverified channel here on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe as well, and we will throw out some clips throughout the week as we really start ramping up towards the month of May here in the 109th Indianapolis 500.
Everyone, it was funny for a moment. The chat was pretty excited about the dude bro, and then yeah, that was fun.
Killsdong fell off his chair.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
I
so
about
far.
fell off my chair.
Everybody's enjoying the new dual screen, the split screen.
There you go.
Yeah, look at us innovating.
And I will say to the chat right now, like, it is freeing up my hands for me to like type. So I mean, I'll be answering some questions that are easy. But then, just keep asking your questions, and I'll relay them to the boys.
So we had the honor on Monday of checking out the brand new, state-of-the-art, really, IMS Museum. It is going to open to the public on a Wednesday. Officially, you can go online, snag your ticket, and then you go. It's kind of appointment, I guess, would be the term for it. As somebody who, at the age of 4 years old, first memory at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway was accidentally getting in the elevator with my dad in like March and going up, and then meeting Terry Gunther, who was the vice president at the time, and he took me around in the Camaro pace car back in '93 to see how long it's came, and the innovation, the new cars that are in there. David, I think you're with me on this. It was absolutely unbelievable to check out yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, so a little bit of background. I've kind of been lucky. I've seen a lot of this process. I served on an advisory council that kind of got a little bit of inside information on this. And when you see the concepts, you kind of go, okay, how's this going to translate to real life, right? Because if it looks like a Pixar movie on a picture, you're going, okay, well, I mean, I don't know. Because, of course, we're all IndyCar fans, right? We hate change. At the end of the day, that we're always nervous about it, and we hate change. And you walk into that museum, and they got it right. I think they got it right. I think there's a good balance. I think it's a little bit different than fans are going to be used to. It's not a bad thing, though. There's a lot more. I think the space is used more efficiently. The fact that there's more of the artifacts, documents, trinkets, trophies. I mean, they have such an incredible archive of items that now you can see.
Rick Mast diecast.
Rick Mast diecast. Yeah, I was really happy to see that in there. I may or may not have influenced that purchase, but there was a lot of really, really cool stuff. And I think the cars are displayed very nicely. I think longtime fans, if I had one criticism, it's a small one, but I think that longtime fans will notice a couple of cars are missing.
Yes.
Obviously, there's an enormous collection of cars. I mean, if you go watch the Doug Bowles tour of the basement, there's a ton of cars that the IMS Museum has at their disposal, and they are going to rotate cars throughout time, and you're going to see different cars. The other thing I think that's really cool is the fact that right off the bat, the IMS Museum is putting a focus on the Brickyard 400, which has never really gotten a focus in the IMS Museum. That's in their rotational exhibit. It's an exhibit that will, over the years, change, kind of like with the Rick Mears, Bobby Unser, Mario Andretti exhibits that you guys might remember from the past few years. That's where those will live, and I know you probably want to talk about the stock cars, so just kind of describe, Tony, because I know the Brickyard, especially for a kid whose first Indy 500 was 1994, and I do want to get back to 1994 because I have a bit of an anecdote about that. But
I'll set you up for that.
Yeah, go for it. But talk about NASCAR.
Yeah, I think it's an important part of history at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And even though it only dates back to 1994, it was cool to see Jeff Gordon's inaugural winning car, absolute beautiful car. Bobby Labonte's car is there from 2000, which is a car that I was in love with in elementary school and middle school. Lime green's my favorite color. But then there's also Dale Earnhardt's car in there. Everything is just displayed incredibly. I kind of call them ramps in my video, where the cars are kind of ramped up on the wall.
They look like diecast.
Yeah, it's super sweet. A couple other things that I wanted to mention too. You walk in and they have the starting line video, and basically you have the front row from last year, and those liveries will rotate after the Indianapolis 500 to replicate those front row starters. And it really, I think it takes the casual fan or the fan that or the person that might not be a fan that's just, hey, I wanted something to do. I want to know about this. It's the greatest spectacle in racing. Most people at a sporting event, I want to go check it out and learn about it. And that really gives you the feel of the pageantry, the emotion between the drivers, between the drivers' wives, the crew, the back home again in Indiana, the Purdue Marching Band, all the traditions that we see. And that it really did. It brought a tear to my eye as we were watching it because it was just so fascinating to check out. And then we walked over to the Penske exhibit with the Tony Donohue corner, which has Al Unser Jr.'s 1994 winner, which was my first 500. And then right next to it has Rick Mears' 1988 winner, which was the year I was born. Joseph Newgarden's car is in there. And some really cool interactive stuff. Our friend Merrill Kane from Team Penske was there. And, of course, David being the goon that you are, I think is the proper term for it.
Liability.
Tell the folks at home what you decided to do. So let me set it up for you.
Yeah.
And I think you absolutely have to do this if you're going to the museum. And not a lot of, and Merrill said, not a lot of people know that you can do this. There's a back wall, and I think that's a permanent. It's the
permanent.
Penske.
Yep.
Penske is permanent. So you're going to see helmets, suits, artifacts. But on the back wall, it's a touch screen, and you can touch the screen, and you can click on any year you want. Roger will talk about that year. You'll get photos, visuals of the Penske cars in that year. And, of course, our boy David Land over here decided to go straight to what year?
Well, so let me set this up a little bit. So I think one of the things that's important to mention about the Penske exhibit is that it is curated by Team Penske.
Yes.
It's essentially an extension of, if you've ever been to or seen the museum in Phoenix, it's now an extension of that. So another car that's in there is like the 1969 Lola that Mark Donohue raced,
yes,
the first car for the 500. And also the 1951 winner is in there, which was Roger Penske's first race as a spectator. So, with the back wall, Tony walked over there first. So Merrill had a PR at Team Penske. Really great guy. Was so helpful in kind of showing us around, kind of informing us about what was going on there.
Somebody from Penske will be there
year round
in the museum.
My jaw hit the floor when he told me that.
To answer any questions about the history about Team Penske. So I mean that is absolutely. I mean that goes beyond the word dedication. I'd say
above and beyond. I mean it is the best. Like you want to talk about effort and equaling results and all those things that Penske says. I mean
Penske perfect.
It's kind of what we dreamed a Penske IndyCar sort of thing could be. I mean it's everything we wanted, but. Tony walked up to this board, this history board, which is so cool. I mean, it is so cool, the fact that you can dive into because you think about Team Penske, it is probably the most, regardless of the fact that Roger bought the place, it is the most significant team in the history of the Indianapolis 500. From wins, from the things that they've done over the years, the controversies they've been involved in, all of these things, they are so instrumental to the race. So Tony, of course, your first 500 was one of the most controversial and exciting and one of the most legendary from a Team Penske perspective, 1994.
Yes.
So Tony's going towards 1994, and he's trying to figure out the board, and he's pushing 1994, and I got a little cheeky. And I saw a year that was right next to 1994, which was 1995.
Indeed you
So
did.
I pushed real hard on 1995. 1995 pushes up, and David runs away, and Merrill Kane walks up, head of PR at Team Penske, and looks at Tony and goes, "Why did you go for 1995 first?" And he goes, "It wasn't me, it was him." And I just looked at Merrill and I said, "Look, I got to be on brand, brother."
I was like, yeah, I wasn't gonna be that guy, but it's incredible. The entire museum is awesome. It is well worth your time, and you're probably gonna. I mean, we didn't. We had a media session. We were kind of ushered out, which was totally fine. They had an event coming up, so we were definitely going to have to go back. There's so many interactive things to do. We changed tires. There's educational pieces. There's a classroom there, which I think is super cool to educate the younger fans, which I think is something that we need to be doing a lot more in this sport to get those younger fans to get hooked on IndyCar at a young age.
We were in there for about 2 hours, and I think I probably saw, and I'm talking about just like looking at very quickly and then moving on to something else, about 20% of what's in there. I mean, it is comprehensive. It's massive.
Yeah.
You're going to literally – so the fact that it's appointment – right now it's appointment only. I believe that's mainly because they're expecting so much demand. I would expect at some point you'll be able to just walk in and buy a ticket. But – when you go in, probably book an earlier time because there's a lot to go through. I think another important thing I want to bring up before we kind of move on is the fact that in the previous museum, you really didn't see a lot past 1995. There really wasn't a lot of newer stuff. And you think about since 1995, that's 30 years ago. There's 30 years of history that really hasn't been represented in the museum. Now there is. I mean, this might be the first time. I'd have to go back. This might be a Donald Davidson question or a Jason Van Sickle question. Is I can't remember the last time, if it's ever happened, that the current defending winning car is in the museum right now. And in the Penske exhibit, Joseph Newgarden's 2024 winning Indy 500 chassis is in the museum as it raced. I don't know if I could say it any better than that.
The only guess would maybe be Weldon's car from 2011. I don't know when they got that or when they redid it, because obviously that thing was tubbed, in Texas?
They drove it on race morning in 2012. But I think it might have been still in the possession of Brian Hurta Autosport at that time.
Because Brian Hurta did drive that, like the ceremonial lap.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, switching gears, no pun intended. Earlier this week, we saw Graham Rahal go on Speed Freaks, which is with Kenny and Crash. We see them a lot in the month of May. I believe that they are based out of Phoenix. And David, there was a lot that came out of what Graham had to say, from marketing of the sport to how media covers the sport to how to grow the future of the sport to sticking up to thermal. It was a lot. We'll give them a plug if you wanted to check that out. Obviously, after this show, be sure to do that. But there was a lot to uncover and a lot of layers of that onion to peel back of that conversation with Graham Rahal.
Well, I think we need to go back to the start of where this all began, is that the Indy Star's Nathan Brown wrote an article about the thermal TV rating and whys and hows that happened, that it was 700,000 people, down from NBC's like 788,000 people. And Graham quote tweeted that particular article and kind of spouted off, said, this is too negative, this isn't right, XYZ. And then, of course, it started a huge Twitter fight. And
of course it did.
As usual. But so that's why the Speed Freaks had Graham on to kind of discuss in greater detail why he decided to kind of go after the media. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. I think we should start because I think you have a few interesting things to say. And Graham had a few interesting things to say about the marketing and the direction of IndyCar. And we've heard it from a couple of different drivers. And I don't necessarily agree with this, but I'm kind of interested to hear what you think about this statement, Tony. And the statement I heard, which I haven't, Graham's not the first person I've heard this from, but the idea that it's great that Fox is promoting the sport, but right now it's only promotion of 3 drivers: Alex Palou, Pato O'Ward, and Joseph Newgarden. Why is that a bad thing?
I don't think that it necessarily is. Those are the, I guess, sexy picks would maybe be the way to describe it. Those are top of their game right now. But I talked to a very prominent driver in St. Pete, and he mentioned, without even me poking, that he goes, well, Fox only thinks that there's 3 drivers in the sport. And those are the 3 drivers. I think it'd be great to have a like a Scott Dixon commercial where he's like sitting on his lawn and he's like, get off my lawn type stuff, or something with the goat, or maybe there's a bunch of goats on his lawn. I think that would be great, right? Because I think Scott Dixon is certainly has an argument that he should be somebody that is promoted.
Why not promote some of the rookies? Like the Gillette Young Guns. Remember those commercials back in the NASCAR days? Why not just say, this is a guy you should care about,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, and maybe there should be a little bit more emphasis on that. I think that they want to promote the 3 drivers that they feel probably are always going to be in contention to win any race on the schedule, right? If you say Joseph Newgarden, Scott Dixon, and Pottle Ward, all 3 of those drivers, no matter what race you tune into, one of those 3, if not all 3, will probably have a chance to win said race that you are watching. But yeah, I do think maybe they should go and say, hey, what are these storylines? Where are some of these personalities that we can put on there? Maybe a Connor Daly. Why don't we do a Connor Daly, local boy, Indianapolis, returning home to run the Indianapolis 500? Why not? Why can't that be a Fox commercial? How about the families? Why not start some rivalry between Graham Rahal and Marco Andretti for the Indianapolis 500? As hey, their dads used to battle it out back in the 80s, and I mean that would get you going for sure.
Yeah, sure would.
And they're back now to defend their name, or that type of stuff.
I want to see Will Power boxing a kangaroo.
I want to see Will, or give it, and then I want to see Will Power boxing a kangaroo, then giving him the double bird.
Yeah,
give him the double bird.
Yeah.
Or how about Scotty McLaughlin running down and grabbing somebody up by their collar or something?
Well, now he has a personality. I guess he's going to fight with everybody.
Why aren't they using Bob Pockrass's video to promote that there's feuds going on?
Well, because there's not a race for another 2 weeks.
Well, that's true. And what do we talk about? We talked about the things that we talked about before the season started on this show, on Unverified, was Fox is doing all the promotion, while IndyCar is kind of seemingly just sitting back and waiting. And we talked about what's the rating going to look like. All the promotion was for the Indianapolis 500 and was for St. Petersburg opening race of the season. What about Thermal? What about Long Beach coming up? I mean, so I was watching a college basketball game yesterday. Fox is still doing the same things on FS1 where they're running promos, and they're running at the bottom ticker on the screen. It says, tune in, to the world's fastest racing or whatever their tagline is. But, yeah, I mean, look, maybe I don't mind the point. I mean, I think there are other drivers that could be marketed as well to grow them and say, hey, we're going to throw Connor Daly on a commercial. Maybe somebody sees that and says, oh, I want to sponsor that driver because there's no sponsor on the side of that car.
Okay, let me throw a complete curveball at you.
All right.
Okay.
No April Fools, right?
No April Fools.
Okay.
So this is something I've been thinking about, and something I actually am going to do a video on tomorrow. But it's a thought that has come into my head, and I'm thinking about it, and I just kind of want to. I guess we'll throw a test balloon out here. Those ads cost a lot of money to make, right? It costs a lot of money to run them on, especially like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
How much do you? So let's just kind of think about this. A Super Bowl ad's like $7 million, right? And how much does it cost to make, just to produce a really nice looking ad about a race car driver? Let's say another $1 million. So let's say it's $8 million to put all of that together.
Are we sure it was $8 million based on the fact that Fox is promoting something on Fox during a Super Bowl?
Well, that's the thing. Fox could have sold that to somebody else for $7 million, right?
So they're
eating the money one way or the other. They could. So what I would say is, if you need hang on. So if they're promoting something, or it's like you're eating the $7 million that you could spend or sell somewhere else. Maybe you take that $7 million and then promote IndyCar. So here's what I would suggest, or maybe just a thought experiment. If they took that $7 million and added 3 races to the schedule, especially at this time of the year, and just said, we don't care if anybody shows up to Phoenix because we spent a $2 million sanctioning fee. Phoenix is paid up. If 5,000 people show up, who cares? It's prime time. We're going to put something in between St. Pete and Thermal, and we're going to fill this schedule out. Is that better for IndyCar than a Connor Daly ad where he's punching a kangaroo?
I don't think Connor Daly would be punching a kangaroo.
Well, or whatever. You know what I mean?
It would make your hardcore fans happy by adding another oval.
But does it add? I just use Phoenix as an example. It could be any race. I'm just saying what we've established is that there's a problem with the schedule, and Fox is willing to spend money. So if IndyCar is now a made-for-TV product with Thermal, Thermal's now it's a brand new business model.
What's the cost? So you mentioned, let's say $2 million is the number for the sanctioning fee to
Right.
go to Phoenix. What is the cost to the teams? What's the cost to Fox? You have to have employees. You have to pay all of your employees, all of your IMS production employees. You have to pay these people an extra race, 2 or 3. What is that payroll like on the budget? I do think, and what have we bitched about? We bitched that the schedule is too few and far between to start the season. It's start, stop, no momentum, race, stop for a couple weeks, race, stop for a couple weeks. We've got one race in April, which I guess it is hard right now. You don't know the weather, so I understand why there's maybe some hesitation to not go run somewhere. But I think that would solve. I think 20. I think 20 races is
that's the right number.
I think that's a good number. And if you want to do those right around this time before Indy, great. I think every driver would tell you they would love to have an oval on the schedule before the Indianapolis 500. But if you were to do 2 of those races in this kind of time slot, let's just say between St. Pete and the Indy GP, I would certainly be about it, and I think there'd be a lot of people that would be on board as well. And like you said, now Fox can say, well, this is just going to be a made-for-TV type thing. We'll go side by side. We'll have sponsors across the screen. We'll sell out all the onboard cameras, and we'll try to make as much money as we can.
And if it's a track rental, throw some damn banners up there.
Yeah.
Say, we're not going to have anybody, if we're going to open one section of Grandstand, right? Like into Phoenix. And then we'll throw banners across. It'll say, Ozempic or whatever, big old logo, right?
Perfect.
So, and I don't know. That's just a suggestion of mine. And here's the thing. Yes, it costs money.
That was crazy.
It costs money, right?
Yeah.
But I think if Fox really is all in on IndyCar, that's what it needs. It needs enough races to fill out the front half of the season, and then maybe a little bit of relief. Maybe you move a Laguna Seca up in the schedule, do like a West Coast swing with Long Beach and Thermal, and then add a race after St. Pete. Then you're really looking at a nicely balanced schedule from the teams, the drivers, the expenses, the cost, and also Fox. Again, it's like this is the attitude. I saw an article today that Marshall Pruitt wrote, and I appreciate that he wrote it, that had a Mark Miles quote in it that just really rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm just going to say this. It was a quote that said something to the effect on the schedule of, he listed like 5 or 6 different things. It was like 3 golf tournaments, NCAA, and I get the March Madness is huge, but he's like March Madness and Easter, and I'm like Easter, and the Final Four. I'm like, no other major sport. I understand there are some things that you have to avoid as a sporting organization, like the NBA doesn't play games on the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
I understand that there are some things that you have to avoid, but this very strange attitude that IndyCar has seemed to adopt, that is, we would rather not race than get a bad TV rating or a bad crowd, is just something I just don't understand.
Yeah, and I think in one of Graham's points, and he told me this 7-8 years ago about, fans don't show up at ovals. And to your point about the schedule, I talked to a crew member on Thursday during the test. It's 4 or 5 different trips out to the West Coast. We talk about, what have we been hearing a lot? Costs, how to cut costs, how to make things a little bit cheaper. Well, how about eliminating 3 to 4 trips to the West Coast? Do a West Coast swing, add Phoenix in there. I don't give a crap if it's on a Friday night. I mean, CW got a pretty damn good rating over the weekend with the Xfinity Series. Throw it up on a Friday night and see what happens. So I think limit, and then the schedule. What happened last year when all of us IndyCar fans got more ovals? They were all stacked on top of each other within a 6-hour drive from downtown Indianapolis, where the core fan base is in the state of Indiana. So if you were a family of 4, or you and your buddy wanted to go to a race, you had to pick whether you're going to do the doubleheader in Milwaukee, where you're going to go to Gateway, we're going to go down to Nashville, and those were all stacked on top of each other towards the end of the season. So I think there is, you have all the pieces to the puzzle of the schedule, and that's fine, but they need to be reworked and put different places. And like you said, hey, maybe not put Laguna Seca Brickyard Weekend. Hey, maybe
that I can't believe that happens.
And maybe and you're right, they have adopted this. But at what point, where does it stop? Or yes, and I've been saying this, March Madness is huge, especially that opening weekend. The Masters is huge, right? So how do you eliminate going against those? Well, you're going against those. So you have all this time and space early on in the schedule, but you decide to go against the 2 biggest spring events, which is the NCAA tournament and the Masters. I get with Long Beach, hard to change that because you've got the city streets that you have to, construct to make an IndyCar track. I understand that.
Thermal could go wherever
Thermal could go wherever the hell it wants, and it could have gone this past weekend where, you're still going against the NCAA tournament, but the NCAA tournament is super hot that first weekend. Then it kind of cools down, and then you get to the Final Four. Could have had it last weekend. You could do thermal whenever. Graham also talked about thermal sponsors. It was the same thing that I texted a friend of mine that sent me about Graham talking about thermal. Well, he's got Mobile One to sponsor him for an extra one, and he's probably going out there with the opportunity to sell some cars to some rich people, which I totally understand. I have no problem with that. Good businessman right there. But, he kind of wants things to be more positive, and he says that people in the media can be way too negative. I don't think he's necessarily talking about anybody in this room, but it's,
I think he is.
Sometimes it is hard as hell to not be negative towards the series.
Well, I have a bone to pick with
Here's
that.
an influencer. Here's a selfie station.
Well, this is why they love influencers and selfie stations, is that influencers...
It's all positive.
Exactly. Influencers are happy to be there.
Yep.
And
look at me. I'm standing in the pit road doing a spin around for my TikToks.
Well, I want to be very clear. I'm always happy to be there. I'm never not happy. The only time I think I've ever not been happy to be there is when someone gets maimed or killed. Yeah. Outside of that, I'm pretty happy to be at a racetrack. The issue I had with Graham and what he said, and listen, I want to start, you've kind of mentioned how you have a soft spot for Graham Rahal. Me too. There's lots of photos of me out there in Newman Haas gear and 38 Service Central gear, okay? So there's no malice towards Graham Rahal here. But I as someone in the media and someone who reads the comments and see all the comments, how, it's not necessarily...
So does Graham, by the way. Graham is a comment reader. Graham is...
Internet...
I told him in mid-Ohio. Because I interviewed him. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I interviewed him, and somebody commented about, he should just hang it up or whatever. And 10 minutes later, Graham rides up on his scooter, and I'm like... Because Graham went back at that guy, and I was like, "You're not mad at me, are you?" He's like, "No, but people think that they have an opinion, and they don't." And I'm like, "Graham,
comment warriors,
just stay off, or don't let it get to you." And he's on there a lot. I mean, hell, his email was going crazy during that interview. But yeah, back. We'll go back to your point here. Sorry, but it's like. Just don't read it. Just don't read it.
Well, but he's... a
lot of keyboard jockeys out there.
And I understand keyboard warriors, and I understand that Graham...
I like the word jockey better.
Jockey warrior, whatever.
Doesn't give him as much credit.
That's all. Well, that's fine. That's fine. I call them Facebook boomers. But
yes.
The big thing with me is that...
What's my password?
When I hear Graham say... Because, again, if he has just a problem with Nathan Brown... He should just be saying Nathan Brown.
Yeah.
Which
he did. He did mention his name.
Which he did. But that's why I believe that he's... throwing a broader net, and I see the comments. I see the comments of you guys who are always saying, "Oh, David, you're too negative. Oh, you clearly just hate IndyCar," and I don't hate IndyCar, but I see the comments, and when Graham says something to the effect of, because I remember he was talking about how thermal, he was, to your point, making a lot of business deals and talking to all sorts of high rollers and important people who are interested in joining. That's great. We love to hear that, Graham, but the media is not your PR department.
No.
There is a very there's a very strong line, and he knows this. And that's why I'm disappointed that he said this, or make the suggestion that the media has to always spin things positively. I just fundamentally disagree with that. Now, maybe he feels differently about print journalism or newspaper people or people who are paid in one way or another, or their organizations are paid one way or another by IndyCar. Okay, great. I guess I understand that, but I'm speaking as an independent media person who, for 99% of the time, pays my own way.
Yep.
And I'm not saying there's no incentive for me to be positive. And I think I call it pretty straight.
I think we're both pretty fair. And
1,000%.
I think there is a lot of things that we talk about that are positive, but there's also a lot of things. It's like we go out and we're not making this stuff up.
No.
If it's an opinion that we have, it's based on people that we've talked to, things we've seen. Sometimes that sways negative. Sometimes that sways positive.
But I'm not sitting around going, "Oh, how can I tear IndyCar down today?"
There are people that do that, I believe.
But that's fine. But I don't think there's any. So if we're going to use the example of Nathan Brown, I don't think Nathan has said anything that's untrue or even off the mark. Because I would quote tweet him if he was.
Yeah.
I think he's spot on to talk about why aren't we racing at Texas Motor Speedway in between. I think that's a valid question. Why is the TV rating bad? Well, because you had a 3-week break, and yes, to be 100%. And that's another thing that Graham said. It's like, look, regardless of how we feel personally about the race, and especially as a driver, I'm sure it was fun to save tires and have the comers and goers. That's the kind of racing that I like to see. And I said, I liked the race. I thought it was a fine race. But you cannot deny that the fans didn't like it. To deny that would be to deny reality. Yeah. And, sorry, I'm not incentivized as a media person, and probably I shouldn't be incentivized to talk positively. I suppose the one thing I would say would be, like, I guess as an independent person, is like, if you want to control the media, then you got to throw us a bone. Hey, Unverified presented by Mobile One. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then we'll maybe have to go, oh, I don't know if I should say this. But, you can't expect us to play PR for you as a media person. That's just not how it works. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, there was an Indy-only team owner that had a problem with some of the things I was saying on Twitter about the struggle to get the car count up. And I remember he actually said to me, and I couldn't believe he said this, but I think some people in the sport actually feel this way. He said to me, you might hurt my ability to get sponsors by saying that. And I looked at him and I said in all seriousness, brother, if David Land saying how things are, yeah, and stating my opinion, which is based in facts, based in my knowledge of the sport, and me saying that hurt your ability to get a sponsor, it probably wasn't a very strong deal to begin with.
So I'll say this about Graham Rahal before I dive into it a little bit more. I've always had a good relationship with Graham. He tells me a lot of things that, sometimes I agree with, sometimes I disagree with. Yeah. We're the same age. I know that I can go to him, and he's going to tell me his opinion. And I do value his opinion in a way that, yes, he is a race car driver. He's usually pretty aware of his results and what's going on. He also, I think, looks at some things as a owner in the sport and a future owner in the sport. If it's hard for, like you said, independence, right? It's hard to market and sell this sport. It's hard. There are sponsorship problems up and down the paddock inside of IndyCar. If you knew the numbers of what it took to be a primary sponsor for this year's Indianapolis 500, you'd probably pull a few of your buddies together and you could probably get something working. Now, that starts with promotion of the sport and marketing of the sport. And I'm going to say this because it just happened to be there today. I went to the Children's Museum this morning with my nieces. We had a great time. And you go into that, the Children's Museum has obviously a gift, whatever you call it.
Gift shop.
I'm getting all fired up. They have a gift shop. There's a Formula One Lego set in there, right? And the only thing IndyCar is Joseph Newgarden's book on the bottom shelf where you wouldn't even know it was there if you didn't know what you're looking for. So it's just things like this that we're not being – it sounds negative, I think, when we talk about these things, but it also just seems like it's common sense. Like, why aren't we doing these things that other teams or other sports are doing? Why aren't we doing what NASCAR is doing? Why aren't there sports cards in a Meira? Why aren't there die-cast in some of these places? Like, it just seems like common sense. And all we heard the last 2 years was budget, budget, budget. Well, now Fox has probably given you a lot more money to work with. So where's the marketing of this sport? I had somebody in a bar over the weekend in downtown Speedway walk up to me and say, hey, I'd really like for you to do a YouTube, podcast, whatever it is, just a how-to guide of how to do the Indianapolis 500. And what I would like to see in there the most is just a schedule of events. What's going on? Where do I need to be? When's qualifying? When's this? You walk down Main Street and downtown Speedway, and you don't see that. So we try to be positive, but marketing-wise and sponsorship-wise inside the paddock, it is a massive problem right now. And it is because I think, in general, the bag has been fumbled on marketing for this sport.
I mean, so I agree in principle. I think it is important to say the Fox money is. I had seen a number. I have to look it up. I had seen a number that was $5 million more a year.
Okay.
Now that's $5 million. It's not anything to sneeze at, but it's not like a Formula One level budget where you can pay the Lego Group to make you a set.
Yes.
Right. But I do think in the context of your experience at the Children's Museum in Indianapolis, that kind of shocks me that there's not like something IMS or IndyCar related. That's something
to buy.
to buy. But I think it needs to be there, right? Like if there's a show car in the Children's Museum, at least the last time I was in there, 10, 20 years ago, there was a show car. I think there is still. There should be something, hopefully, because if you're a kid who's into racing, I think that would really excite you. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, because the problem with a lot of this stuff that we talk about is it's chicken and egg.
Yep.
What do you have to get done first? Because yes. Okay, we need more promotion. Well, you need money for that. Well, we need more races. Well, you need money for that. Well, okay, if you have the money, where do you start spending that first? And that's a very difficult thing. And I think it's something that I think we both appreciate that's difficult.
Yeah.
I don't think we're sitting here saying it's easy. Otherwise, we'd be running the marketing department, which I don't think either you or I want to do.
I would take the call.
Oh, well, there you go. Tony's waiting for the call. Yeah. I will say this.
Not waiting for that.
I'll say
this.
What's
that meme where the skeleton's in the chair? That'd be me.
Well, something I think is important to note about Graham before we kind of get onto the Raul Boesel and Vitor Meira subject.
Yes.
I think it's important to talk about Marcus Armstrong too. I really appreciate drivers that give their opinion, that are willing to engage with the media and even if it's hostile at points.
Yeah.
I think that's great for the sport, to be honest with you. I think it really is good that there's driver media communication.
Yeah.
Whether it's behind the scenes, whether it's off the record, whether it's on the record, whether it's on Twitter. I appreciate that Graham's willing to say what's on his mind, tell it like it is, and even correct, even if it's not necessarily right or wrong. I think correcting things to his perspective, or give his perspective and context to some of these issues, I think is extremely valuable. So while I disagree from my perspective about whether or not the media should be positive, I am definitely not sitting here telling Graham Rahal to shut up or never talk to the media again. I want you to keep doing it because I think it gives us stuff to talk about if nothing else.
Oh, he's a great tool on the fact that you can go to him, whether it's on the record or off the record, and he will give you his opinion. I mean, I watched the end of the St. Louis race with him. Remember, he got taken out or had a mechanical
engine,
or something,
engine failure
midway through the race, and we happened to just be standing there. And then obviously Joseph on that restart, and Graham had some opinions on that, and it's like, oh, okay. Now, I'm not going to run and go straight to my podcast or Twitter and say, because I'm not going to do that, because I value that relationship. But you can't always spin it positive. I understand where he's coming from with thermal and trying to protect that because it is, probably helps out a lot of teams with an extra sponsor.
Give us a reason to protect it.
Well, I would agree with that too. And with that being said, there is a sponsorship and a marketing problem, as we talked about. But as far as spinning everything positive, I mean, there are so many things that the three of us in this room and a lot of other people see while we're at a racetrack where we're going, I'd probably be a little bit more positive if, I don't know, they were bringing me in to do some of these things, if they were actually acknowledging that we are here trying to support their series and grow it, instead of being looked at like, oh, we already have their fan base, we already have their followers, well, we're going to look elsewhere to try to bring in new followers. So I don't want to say appreciation is the word I'm looking for because I don't need that. I don't need that validation. But I just think that, like, hey, when you see some of these people that are getting paid to be there that can't even TikTok or tweet out that the race starts at 3 o'clock on Fox, sometimes you don't go straight to spinning things positive when you look around and you're like, well, why is that person here doing this?
Well, that's kind of a cart before. I think if you're talking about like influences at races, I think it's kind of a cart before the horse thing.
Yeah.
I think there's a place for that. I think there are other. I think it's. I don't think it's great, but I think there is a place for that.
Yeah.
I think the issue is, to your point, is that there are some people who maybe feel that they're kind of getting ahead in line, so to speak. I mean, I think there was a point. I guess I'll give this kind of personal thing is that. There was when I kind of came in on the scene, I felt like there was very much a desire to not have someone come in and be, hey, look at me, I'm the YouTuber. Ha, ha, ha. It was either you be a freaking serious journalist or get the F out. And now that ball has gone. I watched that ball, 2019. I'm watching that ball go over my head this way. And now I'm watching it get served this way, and now it's all about being goofy and just la-di-da, here I am. I would say that's probably my biggest point of contention if we're going down that route. But I don't know how you correct that because I don't think there's anything. And go back to Graham's comments. I don't think there's anything wrong with kind of having a bit. Now look, I like a lot of people in this sport. A lot of people. I like more people in the sport than I dislike people in the sport.
100%.
By a huge number. I think it's cool if we're hanging out after the race and we're all enjoying ourselves and having great conversations and friendships. But there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of adversarial relationship while we're on the job.
Yeah.
Right? But once we get off the job, then it's not personal. I don't look at any of this really as, well, some of it's personal, but not all of it's personal, right? I think there's a difference between, when we walk in the gates, there's a delineation between, you work for the series or you work for a team, and I'm a media person, and there's a line there. But I don't know. That's kind of where I feel. That's where I stand on that issue.
I think we're just past 9 o'clock Eastern time here. Kyle, what's going on in the chat? And then we'll debate the Raul Boesel, Vitor, Meira, I guess blindly, because I didn't really. Did you look up anything stat wise? I think Kyle's got some things going. But
I have some thoughts about it. I don't know. We'll see if the stats back.
I think we all have some thoughts about it. But basically, the chat agree. They want diecast in stores, things on that front. I certainly agree. Obviously, IndyCar. That's honestly something that hasn't been talked about. Is we have a new diecast manufacturer this year. So that's going to be something new to look forward to. And IXO is a company that's not
fans
really
will bitch
stores.
about the price.
They will.
Yeah.
Well, it's only going up a couple dollars, actually. I thought it was going to be a lot worse than it is. But that's a company that's not in stores. Obviously, you can go to Walmart and Target now and get an F1 car from Barago. So that's...
And Hot Wheels.
Yeah, oh, my God.
And Lego.
Let's see. They brought up a couple times of David having to put money in the jar because, not only did you bring up
I didn't bring up the car.
They were ready for you to bring up the car.
I didn't say it, not once.
But you did say it in your museum video.
I did, but
yeah,
Graham, I put a positive spin on it. I put a positive spin on it, Graham, because I said they can just strip the paint off of it and put a new. Oh well, I guess we didn't change the bodywork this year. I thought, oh, there we go. All right, sorry. Anyway,
yeah. So that just got to put $1 in the jar.
That jar is starting to get full. We're gonna have to buy us some.
A lot of people actually stood up.
Unverified 15, right? So there you
yeah.
go. Go on, Kyle.
Yeah.
Sorry.
A lot of people actually stood up for us, saying that they never feel like we talk or dislike the series, and they think it's fine,
Well, when I was a dud last year, I'm not gonna polish a turd and say, that was a great race. It was
not
a
even
dud.
Graham could say that Iowa was good.
He even said it.
He ripped it. Yeah, he ripped it.
Basically saying it's fine to be negative, just be real,
And I think we have. And I think a perfect example of that was Gateway and Milwaukee last year. You and I and a lot of people went into that like, how is this going to work? How are you going to be able to have two grooves? And boy, did we have a really good race at Gateway, and boy, did Milwaukee deliver. And we spun it, or I was
there was
totally
no
wrong.
spin required.
Yeah, that was
a
a
good
great race. That was a lot different than what we expected. But there's also drivers that came into the media session on Thursday. I was like, I don't know how we're going to race this. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know. There's not going to be a second groove. And then if you go back and watch Milwaukee, I mean, that was a master class. Like, if you shut your eyes, you might feel like you're back in 1995 in West Allis, Wisconsin. All right, so I'm going to say,
watch out for Jeffrey.
Yeah. Oh, Jeffrey Dahmer, your boy. I had David convinced that he worked at the fairgrounds last year that we were at, and would just I
heard there was an elephant buried there too.
Yeah, and then there was
I think you guys are all lying to me.
There was a random house. I was like, that's where he used to live. That's his old apartment. The Vitor, Meira, Raul Boesel debate, which I believe is awesome. Neither driver ever won a race, correct?
Nope.
Had some good runs at the 500. Some could say maybe should have won the 500 on both ends. Certainly Raul Boesel. I am going to say by a brief margin that Raul Boesel was the better driver, had the better career.
Okay. So there's a couple of things that I think there are some factors. I don't disagree with you. I'm going to make a few points in Vitor's direction just for the sake of argument.
I watched him eat a bowl of chili one time in Culver's.
There you go. We love chili.
What?
In Milwaukee. It was after the Milwaukee race one year. I think it was the year that didn't like Marco like go over the back of him.
No, that was Vitor that went over.
Or
the
Vitor
top
went
of
over the
Mark.
back.
Yeah, he went flying through the air.
Yeah, we ran into him at the Culver's afterwards during a tornado, and he was eating chili. Continue.
Incredible.
So,
And then Raul Boesel I was interviewed on Fox 59, in 1993, and he had the cool Duracell card and just got his autograph. And the guy on Fox 59 was like, "Who's your favorite driver?" And I was like, "Raul Boesel. I just got his autograph." But that's like, that's not your favorite driver. Why would you pick that? So there you go. I got two little behind-the-scenes stories on both. Go ahead. Sorry.
wow. No driver between the two, Raul Boesel and Vitor Meira, came closer to winning a race than Vitor Meira.
Okay.
Chicagoland 2004. It was, I think, 2 inches
Yep.
between him and Buddy Rice.
And my argument to that would be how many of those races that he was in, it was like you had to be in the right spot. And there was, look at like Ayrton Dare won a race.
Danica Patrick won a race.
Danica Patrick won a race. I still don't believe
Marco
that.
won a race.
I still don't believe that. Marco won a race. But you think about the mid-2000s, like Adrian Fernandez won a race.
Adrian
Thomas
Fernandez
Schechter
would have won
two
the
races.
championship if he shown up at Homestead.
There was enough random drivers down to the wire in those close finishes at the Kansas,
don't
Chicago.
Ayrton Dare, by the way.
I'm not. I love Ayrton
also,
Dare.
Marco won on a road course.
He won in Iowa.
He won because
won
That was 2011, but he won 06 Sonoma.
He had a teammate spin out for him.
Yeah.
What?
So I would say that Vitor had opportunities to win races while it was, I don't want to say a crapshoot towards the end, but as long as you were up towards the front in a lot of those races, you certainly had a chance. Yeah, Hornish was dominant. I think overall, Raul Boesel probably went up against a tougher field overall in his time in IndyCar. And
well, here's the argument against
what
that.
was his last 500? Was that 02 when he was on the front row and
02
didn't
on
do
the
anything?
front row. Yep, for Team Menard. Here's the argument against against the IRL era for Vitor Meira. Even in a post-merger world, I believe that I kind of compare it, the two best seasons of Boesel and Vitor Meira, 93 for Boesel, 08 for Vitor. Maybe someone will correct me on that, but I think those are the two best seasons for each of those drivers. So if you look at it, the competitiveness of each of those series, 08, you would be very hard-pressed to win a race if you were not in a Penske or Ganassi car.
Yep.
If we look at 93, you had a little bit more variety, not a lot. You still had two dominant teams, that being Penske and Newman Haas. But I think Walker had a win. Did Walker have a win? No, that was the year before. I'm sorry. You know what? 93 and 2008 might be exactly
Well,
the
93,
same.
was that when Scott Goodyear won in the Budweiser car at Michigan?
No, that was 94.
94,
No,
okay.
well, Gallus won a few races.
Gallus won,
So I think Al Jr. won a race. I know Danny Sullivan won a race or two during that season. I think back to 2008, you had Graham win at St. Pete, and you had Danica win at Motegi.
Yep.
But I can't, and of course there's the Champ Car race. I don't know if you count that with Will Power, but I don't know if there was really a lot of winning outside of Penske and Ganassi in 2008. So do you look at Vitor Meira challenging, or no, this is an argument for Vitor being able to challenge that Penske Ganassi armada kind of every week in 2008, especially on the ovals, versus Raul Boesel racing in a slightly more competitive, at least at the front, 1993 IndyCar Championship.
Vitor Meira had a runner-up at the Indianapolis 500, correct?
In 2008.
Twice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then
05 would be the other one.
Raul Boesel's best finish at the 500 was third?
Third in
89.
89, which really,
89,
his
yeah.
best 500 was 93. He got a
Yes.
penalty. He probably
Yeah.
would have won the race otherwise.
He was on the front row in 94?
In 93 and 94.
93
He
and
was
94.
out on the outside of the front row in 93, middle in 94.
Kyle, I don't know if you have the stats up. I would say that Vitor Meira has more top fives in his career, but Raul Boesel has more top tens.
I'm gonna look at that. Raul Boesel's 1993 was insane. That's my first glance opinion. Like,
He should have won a race in
Incredible.
1993.
Yeah.
The fact that he did is crazy.
Did he have a good Milwaukee that year? One year he
That's
was,
the race he should have won.
won, yeah.
Yeah, that's the race he should have
Okay.
won.
Vitor Meira, 10 years in the series, 15 podiums, 56 top tens, 2 poles.
Damn, 56 top
131
tens. I mean,
races.
that's
That's
solid.
Under
Yeah.
4 teams. Raul Boesel, so let's think of our number here. 56 top tens
For Vitor, yes.
for Vitor.
I don't think Raul has that many.
But I would also say that Vitor was racing against 18-car fields a lot more than Boesel was. Boesel raced in the era where you're minimum 25. At times, it was 31 cars in like 93, 94. So a top 10 was a lot harder to get in kart than it was in the IRL.
Vitor Meira's back of the field had like Marty Roth, Milka Duno, and
you pretty much had 5 positions right. You only had to make up 5 spots to get a top 10.
And that guy who's in prison, John Herb. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a great, whoever came up with that question, it's an absolute great debate. I think we would love, if the chat has any more of these in the future of a very similar careers.
Well, what's the final verdict? Is it Vitor or, I guess we'll ask chat. 1 in the chat if it's Boesel, 2 in the chat if it's Vitor.
I think it's Boesel, but just barely.
On what merit?
I think it'd be like 55% to 45% if we put it up to a poll. I think it's just, he was going up against, I think, a little bit better competition.
Yep.
That was kind of, as much as I love the Chicagolands and the Kansas and Kentucky's, those races, it was like if you were in the top 8 in the final 10 laps, you had a chance to make a way.
It was more of a lottery.
Alex Barron won at Michigan that one year. He also won Nashville, obviously. But in some of those crapshoot races down the stretch on a super speedway in the IRL days where the right draft coming out of 3, you got a chance to win it. I think Raul Boesel was more of a maybe like it was technically harder to win in IndyCar in the early 90s and late 80s.
I would agree. I think strength of field, to your point, is very important. Yes, it might have been a little more competitive in Boesel's best season versus Vitor's best season. Mm-hmm. Because, again, a lot of those IRL races, like early 2000s, were crapshoots.
Yep.
At kind of the early part of his career. I would argue that 2008, if you weren't in a Penske or Ganassi car, you weren't winning on an oval that year. So I think that's a point towards Vitor. But I would also say that I think that the other factor that I think we really need to consider, that's one that when you compare eras, I think a lot of people never take into consideration, is Raul Boesel put up those numbers when reliability was not assured.
Yeah, great point.
Vitor put up a lot of those numbers not only in a short
attrition. Field
where, like, to your point, there was 5 shitters and all you had to do was make up 5 spots to get 5th place. You also had a bulletproof, at least according to them, bulletproof Honda engine that never failed, that was detuned, that you just put in your car and you knew it was going to work. So as long as you didn't crash the car, which is a credit to Vitor, but if you didn't crash the car, you were going to finish well. And I think the final point...
I don't remember Boesel crashing a lot.
He didn't. But mechanical failures, right? That was the bugaboo of any driver probably before 2001. Was you had some mechanical failures in there. The final point I would make about Vitor, although Boesel had a very similar career trajectory after 1993. After his best season, both drivers kind of fell off the cliff a little bit and really didn't look the same way again. I would say that Boesel was able to maintain his career longer and got some opportunities. He did a fill-in for Team Green in 1999 when Paul Tracy got suspended. The final thing is Vitor fell off at Foyt and a few other places.
He also ran Dale Earnhardt's number 3, so in the Indianapolis 500
in '99.
Yeah, so we got to give him some
Riley
credit for that.
Scott.
Hey, go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I was gonna close it off and just say that Vitor had, I believe, it was like 8 more podiums than Raul over his career, and my only story is when I first started. So Vitor, obviously, I was alive and watching IndyCar as his career. But Raul, I was about 15 or 16 when I started actually going back and watching like 90s races, right?
Yeah.
And every time I'd watch him, I'm like, oh, I really like this Raul Boesel guy.
Yep.
You should have seen my face when I went and looked and be like, oh my God, this guy never wins. I'm like, damn it. Like,
you know what he
does
now?
In the 90s, I was like, I would have.
It's like being a Cleveland Browns fan, isn't it?
I would have been a big Raul Boesel fan in the 90s. It would have been him and Bobby Rahal. Like, would have been awesome.
You know what he does now?
When I learned he had 0 wins.
He's a DJ.
Raul Boesel is a DJ.
He's not a show horse jumper.
He is. He was an accomplished show horse jumper. How was Gary Gerald out at the IMS Museum opening yesterday?
Somebody fumbled.
Come on, fumble in the back. Hey, before we go, Kyle was in Houston over the weekend. Give us a quick recap of what happened down there and everything going on at Kart Chaser.
Oh, yeah. So the weekend was great. It was the first race of the season for the SCUSA Pro Tour. And we put a lot of emphasis on the pro shifter category this year. Usually there's like 2 big pro classes, but this year it's been all in on pro shifter. Starting Saturday morning, we had a Super Pole, which is, segmented qualifying the way that IndyCar does it, where you start with 2 groups and then you go down to 12. That went great. 2 heats on Saturday that were full of action. We had a full course yellow in Heat 1, which we only usually see at the Super Nationals, but there were 43 shifter cards, so there's a lot of chaos where they had to go to a full course yellow. It felt like a car race. But on Saturday, you can go back and watch it on Kart Chaser on YouTube. We have the full Pro Shifter main event stream for free right now. You can go back, watch the whole thing. It's only about 45 minutes to watch it. Came down to a last lap pass, which is being highly debated in the karting community right now. I talked to Danny Formal a little bit on Sunday night about it, where you look at the move and you think, man, it looks very simple. It doesn't look like anything egregious, but in shifter kart racing, the standards change a little bit for what they're used to, and it's being heavily debated. I don't want to. It's Billy Musgrave versus Gavin Bailiff. Billy Musgrave, a guy who's a 5-time champion, oldest guy in the class. Gavin Bailiff getting his first win. So it's the storylines continue to write themselves in what I do, and next race is in Cincinnati, Gavin's home track where he lives, and Billy Musgrave won there last summer, and Mateus Morgado also won at that track last summer. So the podium storyline writes itself. Go watch it. You'll see what I'm talking about. You would love it.
If you like IndyCar racing, you will like
Pretty
shifter
much.
kart racing.
Yeah, so
it's
go
very
watch
similar.
DLand91 on the socials, Racing Nation TV for Kyle on the socials, Unverified_cast on Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe right here to Unverified on YouTube, and our friends at the shop, 15% off of your order. They've got some cool, spoiler alert, they've got some cool pins coming out. Some retro pins. I know a lot of fans like to collect those, so you'll see those coming out on Friday. Use Unverified 15 for 15% off. We're going to have an awesome month of May. We're into April. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time inside of the Fatheads Eyewear studio on Unverified.